This is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Midday Report. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Donald Trump has unveiled a new Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos, joined by several world leaders and promising what he called a new era of global peace. Our reporter, Kazimierz Wysiak, is at the summit. Kazimierz, so what more do we know about this initiative and how is it being received? We seem to have a little bit of connection issue there. We will be right back with you for more information. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the situation in Ukraine as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has arrived in Davos for a high-stakes meeting with Donald Trump after earlier saying that he would stay in Kyiv unless a peace deal was on the table. Our reporter Oz Chatterjee is in Kyiv with more. So Oz, what's the latest on the talks and what do you think is still standing in the way of a deal?
Well, Steve Witkoff, on his way to Moscow, said what he thought was standing in the way of a deal. The one issue, he says, of territory. But this is a major issue, one that both Russia and Ukraine still have fundamentally irreconcilable positions on. Russia wants Ukraine to withdraw from the territories it has illegally annexed, or at least tried to illegally annex, in full. And the Ukrainians do not want to do that. And that's not just the view of the Ukrainian government. Kyiv Institute for Sociology recently polled Ukrainians, and a majority of Ukrainians opposed handing over that territory to Russia, even if there was to be U.S. security guarantees offered to Ukraine. So a very difficult negotiation still to come, and no clarity that there is going to be any agreement reached between the sides, regardless of how positive Steve Witkoff is. Despite that, Zelenskyy has traveled to Davos. He is meeting with Donald Trump for further rounds of negotiations regarding this, and also to talk about potential post-war reconstruction deals. So again, there is a lot of negotiation happening, but there is no clarity yet that we really are heading towards some sort of endgame with it. Meanwhile, Russia has continued to attack Ukraine. 94 drones launched by Russia overnight into Ukrainian territory. And the state of emergency with the power situation is still ongoing. Temperatures have warmed slightly up to -4 degrees from the -15 of the last few days. So some respite there, but the power situation is still critical. There are still at least 3,000 buildings in Ukraine without heating, without power. So there is a humanitarian crisis here in Kyiv, and it's clear to see why Zelenskyy did not want to leave for Davos in the middle of this. He has now left for those talks with the US President Donald Trump. Obviously, the US attention moving away from Greenland now, refocusing on Ukraine. So this could be to Ukraine's benefit, but the situation is still bleak here, particularly with regards to the power situation and with regards to air defense supplies. Ukraine needs more air defense supplies because no matter how quickly they bring back online these power facilities, they are still being bombarded by Russia as the winter temperatures remain below freezing, Benjamin.
All right, situation is dire over there, and the lack of clarity is proving to be fatal. Thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it, and stay safe. Meanwhile, turning our attention back to Davos, Donald Trump has revealed the new Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum, joined by several world leaders as well. Our reporter, Kazimierz Wysiak, is at the summit to tell us more. So, Kazimierz, can you tell us what more do we know about this initiative, and how is it being received?
Good afternoon, Ben. Exactly, President Donald Trump not only revealed, because he's revealed it earlier, but he also signed into law, you could say, the new Board of Peace. He signed it into existence officially now. We have a new international organization called Board of Peace, led by him. He has invited many leaders across the world to join in, but there were about 20 world leaders on the stage with him today here in Davos, and then joined them in signing this first document, and only a handful of countries from Europe. So let me just give you a few. So of course we had Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. I'm saying of course because he's a very close ally of Donald Trump, and he was one of the first European leaders to actually agree to join this Board of Peace. Then we have other countries from Europe like Bulgaria and Kosovo and also Turkey. These are the only European countries which signed on. The rest are from Latin America, from Asia. We have Argentina. We have also some countries from Africa, like Morocco, but also countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and a handful of other from Asia, like Uzbekistan or Armenia. Now, these countries which have joined in, I mean, most of them are allies of Donald Trump, and to be honest, not many more countries have decided to join right now. Many are saying, especially in Europe, that they need to wait and see exactly what this Board of Peace is about, how it would look from a legal standpoint. And they just said that it's not enough time. For example, Polish President Karol Nawrocki, who was in the room with Donald Trump as he was signing this Board of Peace, was not on stage and was not signing because he needs the agreement of the Polish government to do that. However, he does say that he likes the idea, but he needs to talk it through. He actually also got praise from Donald Trump on stage, who said he's very proud of, as he calls him, President Nawrocki. Now, when it comes to Davos here, Board of Peace was, of course, one subject, but there is also plenty of other things happening. As Oz mentioned just now, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is here, and he is meeting with US President Donald Trump to talk about peace. He will be delivering a speech at 2:30 p.m. Central European Time, so be on the lookout for that.
Right, so we'll definitely have to wait to see what that framework entails. But in the meantime, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte pushed back on U.S. President Donald Trump's repeated doubts regarding the alliance. In a firm exchange caught on camera, Rutte told Trump that if the United States were attacked, its NATO allies would respond just as they did after 9/11. Diana Skaya reports.
Having to do with war and peace.
From NATO doubts in Davos to Greenland demand and a sharp exchange at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump questioned NATO's loyalty, even as Alliance Chief Mark Rutte insisted Europe would defend the United States if it were attacked.
But now what I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection. It's a very small ask compared to what we have given them for many, many decades.
Sitting beside Trump, this is Mark Rutte directly addressing the president's doubts, citing NATO's response after September 11, the only time Article 5 has ever been invoked.
There's one thing I heard you say yesterday and today. You were not absolutely sure that the Europeans would come to the rescue of the US if you will be attacked. Let me tell you, they will. And they did in Afghanistan, as you know, for every American who paid the ultimate, for every 2 Americans who paid the ultimate price, there was 1 soldier from another NATO country who did not come back to his family. From the Netherlands, from Denmark, particularly, from other countries. So you can be assured, absolutely, if ever the US will be under attack, your allies will be with you. Absolutely, there's absolute guarantee. I really want to tell you this because it is important. It pains me if you think it is not. And under your leadership, this alliance is stronger than ever.
Asked whether Rutte's words reassured him, Trump offered a measured response.
Well, I hope that that's true. I mean, he's a good man. He's never lied to me before. You know, we've had a good relationship, and he made that statement. That's nice.
Analysts say the idea that NATO has benefited at America's expense ignore the human cost played by U.S. allies.
The idea that, as you mentioned, that NATO just simply has been free riding off of the United States when the only time that Article 5 was invoked was after 9/11, and the U.S. asked for NATO's help. And then that really offensive fact that NATO members, including Denmark, which suffered the 3rd largest losses per capita, and Poland, they sacrificed, in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
And numbers don't lie. By the end of 2014, NATO losses in Afghanistan totaled 3,485 deaths. And even though the United States accounted for nearly 68% of those killed, its allies also paid a significant price. The UK, Canada, and France made up another 20%. Smaller countries suffered some of the heaviest losses per capita. Denmark lost 43 troops. Poland lost 40. The figures reinforce Mark Rutte's point. When the U.S. called on NATO after 9/11, its allies answered. Now, as disputes flare over Greenland, tariffs, and Trump's proposed board of peace,
congratulations.
Mark Rutte's unusually flattering diplomacy appears to have steadied the moment, highlighting how alliance unity hinges upon how carefully leaders manage Washington. For TVP World, I'm Diana Skaya.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, strengthening bilateral and allied cooperation in high-priority security landscape is at the top of the NATO alliance's military chief of staff's agenda. Among the topics being discussed, the High North and Ukraine are key areas of interest. Our defense correspondent, Zuzana Jurek, is in Brussels with more. Zuzana, can you tell us what is the latest development?
Good afternoon, Ben. So we've just heard the concluding remarks from the Supreme Allied Commander for Europe, that is Alexis Grinkiewicz, the chair of the Military Committee of the NATO Alliance, Admiral Cavo-Dragoni, and Admiral Pierre Van Dier, the Supreme Allied Commander for the transformation of the alliance. Now, based off what was expected, Ukraine naturally dominated the discussions, particularly as it pertains to strengthening the country's capabilities, ongoing support through the format of the coalition of the Willings. But as was also expected, particularly in the context of the recent days and the developments surrounding Greenland, with Donald Trump and the U.S. administration of Donald Trump and European NATO allies sparing over what will happen to the future of the island, with Donald Trump claiming he will use any means necessary to secure its interests, to secure American interests in the High North, whilst the Europeans were claiming that the future of Greenland, which Donald Trump was very keen on possessing, potentially reaching a deal, lied with Denmark and Greenland alone. Now, we know that yesterday during the Davos summit in Switzerland, during the Davos Economic Forum in Switzerland, the US President Donald Trump and Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of the NATO alliance, have been able to come to a consensus, to a potential framework agreement on how to build up the defense and deterrence in Greenland as per the requests and security priorities of the US administration. Now, because it's the latest development, we don't know any of the details yet. However, when asked about the potential scope of this cooperation and what this might entail, this is what Admiral Cavo-Dragoni had to say on the subject matter.
Well, we're at the very early stage. Of course, we know that there has been set a framework among, Greenland, Denmark, and US, but we are still waiting for direction. And then from then on, we will start doing our business, which is the military planning and whatever it is necessary to fulfill.
Now, based on this, we obviously don't know all the details of what this might entail. However, the Supreme Allied Commander for Europe, that is Alexis Grinkiewicz, has been able to, for example, highlight some of the countries which might be leading their defense and deterrence, as per the fact that they're the best poised ones to do so. That includes naturally Nordic countries as well as the UK and potentially the US. And now, whether who would take charge of it, it's most likely going to be the Norfolk Command, that is the US Station Command of the NATO alliance. So it seems that the defense and deterrence of the High North is one of the key priorities of this so-called 360-degree collective defense efforts, which we will see being carried out in the upcoming months. Ben?
All right, thank you so much. The recent developments has brought a lot of dynamics into the situation, so please keep us posted. Appreciate it. European markets opened higher than they did last week after Donald Trump assured no military action over Greenland, easing fears of escalating tensions. Investors responded positively, with industries across the continent and Central Europe marking notable gains as attention shifts back to trade and NATO negotiations.
People thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
And with these words, markets around the world breathe a sigh of relief.
After Trump's speech, investors could eventually settle down their anguish. And eventually, today is quite an optimistic day for actually all classes of assets.
On Thursday, a day following Trump's speech, European stock exchanges were firmly in the green, with most of them gaining over 1% before noon. The outlook was even more optimistic in Central and Eastern Europe, where indices made even more impressive gains in the early trading hours.
If we look at the WIG 20 index in Poland, we can see that it hits the week's top. So today it's beaten 3,300 points, which is around the maximum from last week's Friday.
European stocks follow their American counterparts, with S&P 500 posting the best one-day increase in 2 months after Trump's speech. Due to transatlantic frictions, the Polish zloty has strengthened against the dollar to a level not seen since the start of the year, which, according to experts, sends a very important signal.
But it shows that, in this tumultuous environment, investors are keeping their positive sentiment towards Polish currency, towards Polish assets.
In other words, the waters have been calmed. Let's see for how long this time.
And with that, we conclude this edition of Midday Report. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.